Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to go through the best settings in OBS if you're trying to live stream, and also for actually recording video to your hard drive to then, use in your editing program or whatever you may want to do with that. I do this video every year and every start of the new year. So we just came into 2021, but every time the new year rolls around, I inevitably get a bunch of comments on the previous year's video asking if I'm going to do an update for the current year. I've been getting that here. We're on the 25th of January at the time of recording this, and I've been getting that question asked a lot on the previous videos. So even though nothing's changed a ton, I still thought it made sense to go ahead and make an update video for you guys since so many of you were asking for it. So with that said, let's go ahead and roll the intro, and then we'll jump right into it. All right, guys, so as you guys can see, I have OBS Studio opened up right here on the desktop, and we're going to dive into these settings and show you guys exactly what settings I'm using to live stream and also to record video to my computer to then go in and edit and things like that. I actually do stream, and while I'm streaming, I have the same video file in a higher quality save on my desktop. That way I can then send that to my editor or edit it myself for the videos I edit, but have that higher quality video file. So if you're using a newer NVIDIA graphics card, any of the 2000 or 3000 series, or the 1650 Super and higher models, then you do have the newest NVENC chip built into the graphics card, which most people don't realize, but it'll actually let you encode a stream up to like 8K 30 frames per second. So it does a great job, and it's what we will be using, and it's what I use. So when we go through it, that's what I'll be showing you guys. But I will also step through what I feel are the best settings if you're doing a CPU as well, or to kind of show you the best settings for X264 in general, if you're not rocking a newer NVIDIA graphics card. One thing to mention though before starting out is that if you're using Streamlabs OBS, this is pretty much all the same. I use the same settings in Streamlabs OBS as I do in OBS Studio. I just prefer OBS Studio. And also, the one thing you want to make sure you do, whether you're using your CPU to encode your streams or you're using your graphics card, your NVIDIA graphics card, is you want to make sure that you are running OBS Studio in admin mode. The way to do this is you can right click on the icon and click run in administration or run as an administrator when you're launching the program, which will kind of give you that Windows dialog box that pops up that asks you, are you sure you want to run this program? And it gives you a yes or no. So you should be seeing that box pop up and having to click the yes button to launch your program. You can go into the properties of the OBS icon on your desktop and actually change it so that it automatically does that every single time. But nonetheless, just know that you want to run whatever program you're using to stream in admin mode. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive in. First things first, I'm going to show you guys the best settings I found for using NVENC. If we go into our settings in OBS Studio, we're going to go down to our, first we're going to go to our video. You can see you have your base canvas resolution. This is normally the resolution of your monitor. So whatever your monitor, is set to, that might be what appears in here. But your output scaled resolution is where you want to set what actually you're going to be streaming at. So in my case, I'm streaming at 1080p and I'm streaming at 60 frames per second. And for the downscale filter, NVIDIA actually recommends that you set this to the best one, which is, I can't pronounce the name, but we're going to say Lanczos. Sharpen scale, and that's 36 samples. It's such a minor hit that, again, the NVENC chip can actually handle a lot more than you think. And if you're running it in admin mode, OBS will get the priority over any of your games. So even if it creeps into using part of your CUDA cores or anything on your graphics card, as long as you're running in admin mode, it won't affect your OBS at all, and you won't get that encoding overloaded error. You can set this to whatever you want, but again, this is, kind of the best settings, for overall streaming on platforms. So for me, I want to stream at 1080p, 60 frames per second. You can go higher if you're using a site like YouTube. You know, I think they allow up to 4K 30 FPS streams currently. However, I stream to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch all at the same time. And Twitch allows a maximum of 1080p 60 frames per second as of recording this video in early 2021. So I just stream the same to every platform. So with that said, then we go to our output tab, which is going to bring up our streaming, recording, audio, and replay buffer tabs. If you don't see all of this exactly how I have it, your output mode right here is probably set to simple, and you're going to want to switch it to advanced. And then we're going to jump in. So under the streaming tab, you want to select the encoder as being the NVIDIA NVENC H264 new. If you have the option of 264 somewhere else, you want to make sure you select the new one. You don't want to run it through another program. If you're using your CPU, you would select X264. But again, we're going to show you first how to do it with NVENC, then we'll go through setting it up with the CPU. So we're going to use NVIDIA NVENC H264 new. We want to, right here, you have rescale output. You do not want to use this here. You already set that in your video tab, if you remember. Right here, output scaled resolution. This is where you want to set your scaled resolution. You don't want to do it inside here. So we're going to leave this unchecked. Our rate control, you're going to want to use a constant bit rate. You have a bunch of different options, but basically constant means it's going to send whatever we have the bit rate set as. So as you can see here, 6,000 kilobytes per second. It's going to make it so that it's consistently at all times just 6,000 kilobytes per second, or at least right around there for the most part. 6,000, again, if you're streaming only on YouTube and you're streaming at 1440p or 4K, you would obviously need to raise this. But again, the max for Twitch is 1080p, 60 frames per second with a max of 6,000 kilobytes per second. So there's no sense in going any higher than that. So moving on, you have your keyframe intervals. Every streaming service recommends that you set this to 2. You can leave it at 0, which is auto, and for the most part it would be okay, but they require 2 anyways, so you might as well switch it to 2. For your preset, you start with quality. I go ahead and push mine to max quality. Now I will say, even with NVENC, if you use the settings that I have listed here, it is going to use some additional CUDAs and stuff on your graphics card, which means if you're not running in that admin mode, you could possibly get encode and overload messages in your OBS. So you want to make sure that you're running in admin mode. Again, just a reminder. So I go ahead and do max quality. For the profile, it starts on main. We want to switch that to high. This just unlocks some additional settings in the H264 codec that allows us to do some other stuff. It doesn't impact any performance, but gives you a minor quality increase. Again, if you have issues where you're maxing out your GPU, you know, in games and stuff, and you're not running in admin mode, it could give you some issues. So if you run into, and maybe you do run in admin mode and you still have some issues, the first things I would do is drop this max quality to quality and drop this profile from high back to main. But again, you should be able to do this no issues as long as you're running in admin mode. So look ahead and psycho-visual tuning, we want to check both of those. So what these allow you to do is look ahead allows the encoder to dynamically select the number of B frames between 0 and the number of B frames that you specify. And what this basically means is B frames, which you can see down here, we have a max of B frames. B frames allow the encoder to look at the previous frame and the next frame that's coming up and make a decision if it should insert a high quality frame in between those two frames. Basically, it lets it throw in an extra frame to make sure that there's no issues when it comes to the quality of what you're encoding or recording to your hard drive. So we want to go ahead and have look ahead enabled. Psycho visual tuning, that basically allows for if you're doing fast-paced games and stuff, a lot of FPSs and stuff, it helps with the quality in fast action. So if you're moving a lot, one thing with NVENC is that it can sometimes, if you're in really fast action-paced games, it can be a little bit blocky at times, or can get a little bit blocky. This helps with that. Again, turning both of these on does increase the usage of your GPU and may increase the usage past just using the NVENC chip. But If you have a higher end graphics card, that shouldn't be an issue, and it would definitely be something that I'd recommend. If you have a lower end graphics card that you're already kind of, you're trying to play newer title games and you're only getting maybe 30 to 60 frames, even on like lower medium settings or something, then you may not want to use some of these extra settings. But just know that if you don't, then if you're playing fast action games, you might have that blockiness and things like that. So with our GPU, this can be set to 0. This is only if you have, let's say you have 2 GPUs in your system and you want to use one for playing games and the other one for encoding the stream and streaming. You could set which GPU OBS is using. However, NVIDIA actually says that the performance that you would gain by doing that is actually lost anyways by having to send the frames to the other GPU. So in essence, they really say you shouldn't do that anyways. So 0 just uses the default GPU. Max B frames, you want to have this set to 4 unless you uncheck the look ahead option. If you don't have look ahead checked, then you want to have this set to 2 instead. This again is just telling it how many frames it can look previous and ahead, and how many frames up to that it can insert to improve the quality of your streams. And that is the best settings for streaming. So now for recording with NVENC, if we go over there, you can see pretty much the top is just you choosing your recording path, you're choosing your recording format. I personally choose to record in MP4. I do multiple audio tracks, so I have all of my different Spotify, Discord, my own microphone, my music, all of that on separate audio tracks. That way inside of my editing program, Adobe Premiere, I can manually adjust or decrease certain audio depending on if maybe, friends' voices are too loud, I can lower them in post or whatever. So I use MP4. You can use MKV and then remux the recording afterwards. And that's actually what is suggested by OBS, because then what this, you can see I got a warning down here, because if you stream just to MP4 directly, if you have like a blue screen of death or your computer crashes while you're streaming or recording a video, you lose the file completely unless you're in FLV or MKV. If you want to do multiple audio checks, you have to do MKV, and then like I said, you can remux recording right in Adobe. If you don't know how to do that, there'll be another tutorial, I'm sure, somewhere on my channel or on YouTube on how to do that. But for the sake of this, I use MP4. I never have my computer crash while I'm streaming or anything. And I run into issues with Adobe Premiere wanting to import my files and stuff if I record in anything other than the MP4 format. Again, encoder, we want to use H.264 NVENC new. You can see there's lots of different options. If you're using a CPU, you would choose X264, and we will go through those settings in a minute. But for this is NVENC. And then here it's a little bit different. So rate control, instead of constant bit rate, NVIDIA cards specifically have what's called a CQ P option, which honestly, I can't remember what the letters stand for, but basically it's just NVIDIA's way of kind of their variable bit rate, but it basically gives you the best quality that the GPU can output. And then right below that, you have a CQ level. So you can set this anywhere from 0 or 1 up to 20. The lower the number, the better quality, but after about 13, 14, it's pretty much lossless, so you're not really going to notice any difference. So I found that the best is setting it at 15. Again, 14 would probably be considered lossless, so you are losing just a touch at 15, but the file size on your hard drive versus the quality, I found 15 to kind of be that sweet spot, and it seems to be what NVIDIA recommends the most. Keyframe intervals, again, this one doesn't matter as much on your recording side, so I just leave it at 0 auto because you're not, streaming it to a service that requires you to have a certain keyframe interval. So I leave that at 0, and everything else is exactly the same as under the streaming tab. So you have the preset set to max quality, you have the profile set to high, you have look ahead and psychovisual tuning on, GPU set to 0 because we're just using the main GPU, and max B frames set to 4. Again, if you have look ahead unchecked, you'd want to change your max B frames to 2. And if you're having problems with encoder overloading, you can drop the preset to quality instead of max quality and the profile from high to main. And honestly, you're still going to get great fucking results. All right. So with that out of the way, that is NVENC. That is the current settings I'm using. What you're seeing here is what I actually use when I'm streaming. And again, with this setup, I have a 2080 Super. And I am streaming and recording, as well as have the replay buffer active, which allows me to capture the 60-second clips anytime I want, all at the same time enabled, and have no issues with my encoder getting overloaded as long as I'm running OBS Studio in admin mode. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at X264. So X24 is pretty simple. What you want to do is, again, you want to select under your encoder X264. Your rate control, we want to do constant bit rate, just like we did with the NVENC, and we want to do 6,000 kilobytes per second. Again, this is for 1080p 60 frames per second. If you're using a lower resolution, 1080p 30 or 720 60 or 720 30, then you would want to adjust this to whatever Twitch recommends via their page that shows the different recommendations for bit rates for whatever resolution and frame rates you are streaming in. But for our sake, 1080p 60 frames per second, trying to eke out the best quality we can get on Twitch, specifically because they don't allow anything higher, 6,000 kilobytes per second. Keyframe interval, again, that would be set to 2 because that's what all the streaming services require. Auto really doesn't do anything, but again, it's just better to set it to 2. Profile, we again want to do high, just like we do under the NVENC. And tune, this is just like basically add in some effects. You can add film effects, grain, all of that stuff. So we don't want to do anything with that, so that stays exactly how it is. And then with X264, the way that you increase your quality is, as you can see, the default is set to very fast, and it says higher equals less CPU. So higher means higher up on the list. So if we're running it very fast and like for example, in my system, I'm using the AMD Ryzen 3950X, which is the 16 core 32 thread processor. So if I was recording with X264, I got plenty of room to go down the list further, which would be like faster, fast, medium, which is going to use more of my CPU, but it's going to give me higher quality on my stream. You might start off at very fast, and if you have a really older system that you're trying to stream from, or a CPU that's not that great, you might actually, if you're getting that your encoder is getting overloaded, you might actually have to go to super fast or ultra fast. But starting from the very fast preset, what I would do to find out what's best for me is I would open up, Windows Task Manager, where I can see how much of my CPU is being utilized, and I would go down to faster, and I would stream a stream with that. If my CPU is staying fine, if my temperatures are staying fine, if I'm not getting any errors inside OBS Studio in terms of my encoder getting overloaded, then on my next stream, I would start with fast, and eventually go to medium. Honestly, anything lower down the list than medium is probably not going to yield that much of a better result. And to be honest, there's not very many CPUs that are going to be able to handle anything medium. So for example, with my CPU setup, that's the 3950X, which is, one generation old processors. I know they got the 5000 series out now, but medium's about the lowest on the list I can go, which again means higher quality, before I start getting overloaded with my encoder. So again, you start it very fast. You'll just want to figure, but this is really what's going to determine your quality on your particular PC if you're streaming with your CPU. And then for recording, if we go to there and go to X264, it would be the same thing. The only difference is you'd still use constant bit rate instead of CQP like we did with NVENC. And instead of 6,000 kilobytes, you might want to do, my personal recommendation of what I typically do is 20,000 kilobytes per second, which would be like 20 megabytes. Again, you can go higher and get a little bit better quality, but I found for the amount of space stored on your hard drive, how much the video file, how big that file is versus the quality that you get, I found 20,000 kilobytes per second to kind of be that sweet spot personally. Keyframe interval, again, you can leave this at 0 here because it's really not that big of a deal since we're not actually sending it to a streaming service. And again, your profile, you'll want to select high here. And the same thing, whatever you found works best for your streaming here, you would put for your CPU usage preset here. So maybe we got down to faster, we would have both of them set to faster from the default, very fast. And again, that's really where you're going to get the quality increase when you're using your CPU. And that's it. That's basically everything that you would need to get running. And then one other recommendation that I may make is if you go to advanced, especially if you're using your CPU, but I do it no matter what, you can actually select the process priority. So every application you have running on Windows has a process on it, and you can actually rank different processes higher than others so that the CPU or your computer system gives those priority over other programs you may have running. So typically if you're streaming, you have a lot of different programs running. You have your game, you have music, you might have Discord running in the background. So in here, you can actually set, the default is normal, but you can move it up one to above normal, which tells your computer to give OBS priority over everything else. And I found this helps a lot, especially if you're encoding with your CPU. And it also helps if you are running it in admin mode and you're still getting encoded overloaded messages. Sometimes it helps clear that up as well. So it might be something worth checking into. And outside of that, that's basically what's going to give you the best settings, in my opinion, that you can currently get in OBS, streaming specifically to Twitch. Again, if you're streaming to any other platform, the settings would pretty much be the same. You would just increase the resolution that you're streaming at, like on YouTube, and then you would increase the bit rate to whatever recommendation the bit rate is for that service at that resolution and frame rate. Other than that, all those other settings would stay exactly the same. So literally the only thing you would change if you're wanting better quality on like YouTube or something is here, this CBR 6,000 kilobytes per second. You would increase this bit rate to whatever it is that the streaming service is recommending. And under your video tab, you would have your scaled resolution matching and your FPS to whatever you're trying to do. But everything else, max quality, high look ahead, psycho visual tune, and max B frames would all stay the same. And your recording would stay exactly the same, even if you're streaming at a higher resolution. All right, guys, and I hope that helps. I know this is a little bit of a long video. Some people like just a quick thing that just says, hey, plug in these settings, but I try to explain to you guys what these different things are doing. That way, if you run into issues, because every computer system is different, everybody's hardware is slightly different. So hopefully by trying to explain the setup to you or get you to understand what I'm doing in them, that'll help you make adjustments or tweaks where you need to make them to make sure that you're getting the best quality stream you can. If this video did help you out, make sure you hit that like button. That helps me out tremendously. Again, I know I have videos on the past, and even the last video I did on this, the settings were very similar. I might have changed one or two things since then, but I do get asked for an updated version every year, so I wanted to oblige you guys and do that. So if it did help you, like I said, make sure you hit the like button. If you like videos related to streaming, gaming, stuff like that, make sure you hit the red subscribe button below and ring the bell next to it to get notified when I post new videos. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out, everybody.